Good evening. Welcome to Guitars and Music. We talk about guitars like we're going to do tonight. We discuss great music sometimes. We review gear sometimes, which I guess we're also kind of doing tonight. And also, sometimes I play my guitar, and I hope you'll watch some of the videos where I play, and I'm trying to do some different things with my guitar. I hope you'll consider subscribing. But you know, there's so many videos on YouTube, Strat versus Tele, Strat versus Tele. And I almost didn't want to do one, but I've got some thoughts on it, and I kind of wanted to share my thoughts. So even if you've seen 100 videos on Strats versus Tele, I hope you watch this one, because I'm actually going to give my specific opinion on what I prefer at the end. They're both great guitars. So this I'm not going to try to lift them both up. I thought about trying to do that, but this is my American Professional Strat. I've got a couple Strats and several Teles. And actually, well, just a little bit of backstory. I bought my first Telecaster in about 1988, and it was a Japanese Telecaster. And it was a real game changer. I'd been playing for years. I was in my, I think, late 20s, but I've been playing quite a long time. And it was the first guitar I ever had that really stayed in tune well. That it sounded great. Of course, a lot of even cheap guitars can sound great if you have a good amp and everything, but the playability of that thing was so good. And for the next 30 years, I was just Teles. I bought a couple more, and I always just said I was a Tele. I just wanted to die playing Teles, and I still love Teles. And in about 2 seconds, I'm going to show you a couple of my Teles. But over the COVID period, I bought this white American Professional Strat, a 1 in Olympic white. You know what that is, everybody? That's Jimi Hendrix right there. Doesn't have the big CBS era headstock, but that Olympic white, I just saw it and I had to have it. And then I ended up I found a used one. I walked into a Guitar Center and they had a used Highway 1, and that satin nitro finish just caught my eye, and I bought that, and you can see me playing that on a lot of my more recent videos. So I've now got 2 Strats, and it's really caused me to think a lot about what I prefer. But I love them both. At the end, I've actually got an opinion on what I like better. I'm not going to try to kind of hem and haw or say, well, let me know what you think in the comments or something. Of course, you're welcome to do that. But I'm going to tell you what I think, because they're both great guitars. So let's look a little bit at these Strats. But first, I'm going to play a little bit. I'm just going to do a couple clips with my 2 American Professional instruments. One's an American Professional 1 Strat. One's an American Professional Tele 1. And I'm going to kind of splice them side by side so you can hear I'm going to kind of play the same blues tune and just flip them in and out with quick splices. I'm not going to change a thing on my amp. My amp is a Supro Blues King 10, and I'm playing it through a Keeley Dark Side pedal, but I don't think I'm going to use that too much. Maybe I'll clip it on a little bit, but I'm just going to let you hear these guitars going straight through the amp. Just a short little clip, but just to kind of start out, and then we'll talk a little bit about these 2 beautiful instruments. So you heard those two instruments. Now this is the Tele I was playing. This is my Butterscotch Blonde American Professional 1 Telecaster. I'll tell you that I haven't really played the American Professional 2, but I don't know how they could be much better than the ones. I mean, these ones are great. And I think this has an ash body. But this is a great guitar, and I have several Telecasters, and to me, in a lot of ways, they're the perfect guitar. And I just want to say a little bit about why I think the Telecaster was such a game changer. And I think a lot of you know about Leo Fender, and we're going to talk a little bit about Leo Fender. He was born in 1909, and he had a background in accounting, and he had a background in business. Legend has it, and I don't know if it's true, legend has it that the man could not play a G chord on the guitar. And if you think about it, this is a guy, and he kind of wore, I don't want to laugh, but he kind of wore horn-rimmed glasses, and it sort of, you always kind of picture him with like pencils in his pocket and one of those pocket protectors, kind of with drafting pencils. And that guy was just a boots on the ground American genius. As far as I'm concerned, he's right up there with Thomas Edison or Henry Ford, because and I don't think that's an exaggeration, he invented the Fender Telecaster and the Stratocaster, and if you think about how much we've all heard that, even if people don't pay that much attention to the guitar, but he invented those two instruments back in the early 1950s. But the first was the Tele. And in a lot of ways, all the guitars that kind of came later were the children of the Telecaster. And it really is it was sort of, Leo Fender was trying to kind of address a lot of the like orchestra players that needed a guitar that wouldn't feed back, and they were kind of trying to figure out different ways to take what were basically acoustic guitars, or maybe hollow body guitars, and amplify them. So he invented this solid body guitar. And I just wanted to say a little bit. The thing I like about the Telecaster is it is so stripped down. It is the basic mechanical function of a stringed instrument with as little else as possible to make it complicated. And with a stringed instrument, you've got a guitar, you've got the bridge down here, the strings come over the bridge, and they run up here to the nut. And that's called the scale length. So you've got the bridge and the nut, and then the string is suspended across that, and it's like a suspension bridge almost. And Leo Fender just took that, just what is the most minimal, simple way to make that string just suspend over there with as little problem as possible. And it's a really flat, basic, I love it. So, but I'm not saying it's ugly, but it was about function. It wasn't about form. This is just pared down. It's like a breadboard or a cutting board with strings on it. And they've kind of, it's got a beautiful finish on it and everything, but it's just raw guitar, really. But, it was such a game changer. And the other thing is the headstock is really flat. So when the strings come over that nut and go to the tuners, the headstock, like a lot of guitars, Les Paul, for example, the strings kind of are bent in some way once they cross the nut up here, or the headstock kind of angles back. And that really hurts the intonation. So that was to me the game changers when I got that Telecaster and it stayed in such good tune. So for years I played that Telecaster, but then I bought a Strat, and I'd never really played a Strat. When I was a kid, I had a Strat that I borrowed. I was in a band, and my guitar broke. When you're a kid, I was like 19 or 20 or something. My guitar broke or something happened to it. And this guy loaned me a pretty good Strat. And back then, I don't think they didn't have all the different types of Strats they have now. And I never liked it too much. I played it for about 2 months fairly regularly around Detroit. It had a tremolo bar on it, and I don't think I never thought I never thought I could really dig in and play because of that tremolo bar. It always felt kind of like if I was playing something really rubbery, like Bridge of Sighs or, some kind of Hendrix stuff, I always really liked it. But I like to pick a guitar, So anytime you're playing like a G chord, you know, C chords, D chords, picking, which that's in a lot of electric guitar, you know. I always like to be able to play, you know, in a guitar that had a lot of good crisp action. And a lot of those other guitars that rock players like, to me, were always so rubbery. And when I got that Tele, like I said, it was a real game changer. You could play rock on it. I mean, everybody knows, look at all the great rock and roll that's been played on Telecasters. Led Zeppelin 1 and a bunch of the Led Zeppelin, actually, particularly the early stuff, was all on a Telecaster. So obviously, Teles are great. But then I bought my Strat, and let me just get that Strat for you. Now, when I bought this this was my first Strat. And you know what? I'm embarrassed to say, I don't even know. I think this might be a hardtail, and I didn't know it. It doesn't really, I put a tremolo bar in there and it didn't really move. So it functions to me like a hardtail. And I haven't really had to change the strings yet, which has got good elixirs in it. I'm glad, because from what I hear, there's a shortage of guitar strings. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this has really good intonation, and to me that was what I never liked about Les Pauls. I played an SG for a while. I always thought SGs are great if you're playing Who live at Leeds, Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and, you know, really heavy, a lot of those big fat 151 power chords. But I like to open up and play different styles. I love hard rock, I really do. But I like to have a guitar that plays different styles, and I never felt those Gibsons afforded me. The ones I've played, now I've never had a lot of Gibsons, so maybe I'm wrong, but I did own a SG for a couple years, and I never could get it in really good tune where you can just really relax and play. And I used to kind of think that about Strats, but this one, it tunes up great. So I'm going to play it in a minute. The other thing I wanted to say before I play is about the pickups. You know, one of the things people say about a Strat versus a Tele, Teles are very closely associated with country music, and I think that turns off a lot of people. Of course, I like country, so well, Hank Williams say, if you don't like country, you can kiss my ass or something. Not really, but I like country music, and I like you know, the Stones that have a twang. But one of the things, you might wonder why that is. One of the things that I was studying is the pickup on a Tele, this bridge pickup actually has a steel plate under it. And that, scientifically speaking, changes the magnetic field around the pickup and everything. And, you know, some guy was kind of explaining that, which was very interesting. But of course, what I think of it as, the materials used in an instrument always affect the sound. You know, a brass instrument has a brassy sound, an acoustic guitar has a woody sound. And, you know, the different tone woods make a difference. So obviously when you have a big plate of steel under there, I always thought that kind of brightens the sound, and it gives you that kind of steel metallic sound. So there is a kind of bite to a Tele, but there is a little bit different sound with the Tele. But I think the Tele is a very versatile guitar. I don't feel like, you know, if you're not playing Crying in Your Beer or you know, Buck Owens or something, you shouldn't be on a Telecaster. That is not the case. Yeah, I've seen guys play jazz, you know, All the Things You Are, and you know, Some Enchanted Evening, just really beautiful, like fingerstyle jazz on Telecasters. I mean, it's truly an all-around guitar, and it's the genius of Leo Fender that he made such a plain, simple guitar. One of the things to say about the Strat is there are a lot of aesthetic changes. So you've got more carves. See the carvings on the Strat, and you know, supposedly it was called that because of the stratosphere and there was the dawn of the space age. I've also heard it was because of the Stradivarius violin, and I feel like the Strat has more of a kind of violin sound sometimes. I notice it when I play. Here in this clip, you can hear it a little bit. But the other thing I heard about the Strat is that it was carved to look like a beautiful woman's body. Of course, that's not the kind of thing you put in a product description for the kiddies to buy in the Sears and Roebuck catalog or whatever, but that's what I heard. And actually, I don't know. Once somebody tells you that, you can never unhear it. But I think it's... She's my baby. I love this guitar. She's beautiful. And sometimes I rub my hands on it like this. My wife gets mad at me, but it's a great guitar. But it's more. they try. One of the things they're trying to do is make it more beautiful than the Telecaster. You know, it's like the Telecaster is kind of like, this is a functional guitar. It's going to work great, but it is what it is. And then they made the Strat that was kind of had a tremolo, a little bit different pickup configuration. One of the biggest differences in the Strat was it was supposed to be more beautiful. Funny thing was, they found out a lot of people love those old Telecasters just the way they are, so they kept them the same. Let me finish with what I think. After playing, when I first got this white Strat and I plugged it in, I got that really sweet tone. So my conclusion, and I'm not going to be vague, I love them both. I know that sounds kind of like a cop-out, but I prefer the Strat. I prefer the Strat, and I've had Telecasters for over 30 years, but the two Strats I have are just awesome. They sound great. They play great. I don't, you know, then when I play a Tele sometimes I go, wow, I forgot how good these are. They're both great, but I've been playing these Strats a while and I've decided I prefer them. Now there is some country music. I think if I were doing a country gig, I'd take a Telecaster or anything where I needed to be playing a lot of like open acoustic type chords, which isn't just country music, you know. But actually, this thing does that pretty well. But I think if I were playing in somewhere where I wanted to be playing a lot of G chords and C chords, I would probably take the Tele. But for blues and rock, which is what is my favorite type of music, and sort of I don't know, prog rock, just all the things like classic rock, I guess, all the different styles that went along with classic rock. I think I prefer the Strat, and it's close. You know, I'm glad I don't have to pick, but it was this one and that Highway 1. It's been a love affair. They're just awesome guitars, and there is a little bit of a sweetness to the tone of a Strat, and they'll sing. They sing when they cry, if that makes any sense. You just get a sweet rock, you know, it's sustained rock, you know, fuzz, distortion, but it sings, and it's a really beautiful instrument. And I just wanted to conclude with giving a little hats off to Leo Fender. As far as I'm concerned, one of the great figures in American business and music. And for a guy that didn't know the G chord, but you know, and he kind of has that Maytag repairman look about him, you know. I'm not one to talk because I'm not Joe Fashion cool myself, but he kind of had that, you look like a grocer or something, you know, in some of those old photos. And the man was just a mechanical genius. And even if he wasn't much of a musician himself, his sort of mechanical aptitude, he just understood the simple and ancient idea of how that string is suspended between the bridge and the nut. And he just tried to make a guitar that was as clean and as efficient as possible in creating that suspension of the string. And it was a genius stroke. And the pickups he made were, you know, those single coil pickups. And, you know, there are other videos that go through a lot of the technical aspects of that. But the form and the function of that instrument was so well done. The Telecaster, and the Strat is kind of a modified Telecaster. The Les Paul came out right around that time, but it was after the Telecaster, and to some extent, I think some of the elegance of the Les Paul and what someone maybe would say was the fancier look of a Les Paul was an attempt to compete in a business way with Fender. They were kind of the big two back then, like today. But I think some people might say some of the designs they made with the Les Paul hurt the function of the guitar in some ways. It looked cool, sold millions, and they sound great and all that. But I'm going to go with the Strat. If I had to pick one guitar, I'd have to decide. I think this white one, the American Professional over the Highway 1, would be my preferred one if I only had one, because the American Professional, I think, tunes up a little better. It doesn't have those jumbo frets, but I think the Highway 1 growls a little more. It's got different pickups on it and those jumbo frets. So I'd hate to have to choose, but I'm going to go with the Strat. But the Stratocaster and the Telecaster, you cannot go wrong with either one. And I think to some extent, the people, oh, I could never play that song on a to play that song, you just have to have a Tele, you know, or you cannot play that song if you don't have a Les Paul. I mean, come on, you can't play Slash on a Strat, you know, oh my God, you know, we'll need the fainting couch, you know. You can play almost anything on a Strat or a Tele. You know, guitars have different characteristics, but I think if I had to pick one, and that's kind of new for me, and I'm not that young, but I'm falling in love with the Strat. I finally, at this stage of my life, have seen why so many people think it's the great guitar, the great electric guitar, and I agree. I agree. So, going to go out with a few of these Strat Tele clips. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you'll consider subscribing. God bless you.